I'm Lisa from sewnlife.com, and in this video I'm going to show you the basic equipment that you need in your sewing kit to get started with all of the sewing projects that you'd like to do. So this is the equipment that I think that you need. First of all, you've got thread. So this is an all-purpose sewing thread. The brand that I've got here is called Gutterman, and I've just used this forever. It's just widely available in the UK, but there are plenty of other threads that you could use, which are all perfectly fine, as long as you make sure that it's a proper sewing quality thread. This is 100% polyester. What I would say is, if you see, I'm pulling that really, really hard and it doesn't snap. I have got other threads in my sewing stash that I've probably had for years and years, don't know where they came from, but can you see how that came apart? Just move the camera as well. That came apart really, snapped really easily. So this is a thread that I would use for tacking, which is when you're just using a thread to hold two pieces of fabric together and then the thread gets cut away at a later stage. So I would make sure that your thread is a good quality thread. Your thread is always going to want to match your the fabric that you're using. So what I would do is I would take the fabric that you've chosen with you to choose a thread, lay some threads on it, and the thread that blends in the best is the one that you're going to use. So for example, that white shows up a lot more, the brown shows up too much, so I would go for this grey tone. Okay, so it needs to colour match as best as possible the fabric, and it really needs to be the backing. If you've got a pattern on, it would be the backing colour that you need to match, or whatever colour is the most dominant within the fabric. Okay, next is a measuring tape. This one is plastic. I've had it for years. It's got centimetres on one side, inches on the other side. I've had cloth ones as well, but the only thing is with the cloth one is that over the years it does stretch, and that means that it's no longer a true measure. These don't stretch, and these, gosh, I think I've probably had that for 30 plus years. These will, you know, once you buy it, that's it. You won't need to buy another one. So, but you will need a measuring tape. Scissors. Now, these are very personal choice. I've had these, again, I've had all of my equipment for a long time. You need two pairs of scissors. This is a pair of fabric scissors. So you can see they've got a really long blade here. They're really comfortable handles. I use these for cutting out all my fabric. Now, you must never use these to cut out paper, because the paper will blunt your scissors. So don't let your kids use it for their art projects or anything else. Guard them very carefully. This brand is Fiskars. I think I actually bought these for a present many years ago, but they've lasted me for a very long time. Now, as well as a pair of fabric scissors, you'll also need a pair of little scissors. These are actually the same brand, and this is just for snipping threads. I also have a pair slightly bigger. I've used these for longer actually. These are a sort of a fairly newer pair. But again, it's personal choice as to which sort of size you use. They both do the same job. This is a seam ripper. You will need a seam ripper. There will always be, it doesn't necessarily have to be a seam, but there will always be rows of stitching that you do that are not correct and that need to be taken out. Now, if you can see on here, this curved area is actually a very sharp blade, and the way that you do it is that when you have some stitching, so you just use this because it's very pointed and sharp, and it just cuts the stitches for you. Okay, it's just more accurate than scissors. You can use scissors, but a seam ripper is quite handy. Okay, needles. I have lots of needles, collect them along the way. As my eyesight is not fantastic, I prefer one with a slightly bigger eye, just because I find it easier to put the thread through and be able to see it. I just keep these on a piece of felt. Yeah, I've had those for years. You can pick those up quite cheaply. As long as they're sharp at the end, you're good to go. and then pins. So I've got two types of pins here. I do like to use pins. Some people don't use them as much, but I like to use pins. I cut my fabric out with my scissors and I pin my pattern to the fabric. I don't use weights. Some people use weights. I like to use pins. I have got, these are dressmaker's pins, and they're quite small. They're very small and dainty. They're very good if you have lightweight fabrics as well. So they're good for the lighter weight fabrics, and they're very handy. I like those. And then these pins are quite different. They're quite a lot bigger. They're quite sturdy. You'd perhaps use them on the more sturdy, thicker fabrics. They're longer as well, so they're better for bigger projects. They've also got like a big glass head, so which is coloured and is quite visible, so they won't get lost. But just to show you a comparison, can you see how different in size they are? So that's a dressmaker's pin, and that's the glass headed pin, so quite a bit difference in size, but I use the two. So those pieces of equipment, really, if you've got those, you can get by doing most sewn projects. You can add things later as you want to, as you get more into it, but this really is all you need. Okay, so there's three things here that are an addition. They're not totally necessary when you first start out, so it's not really part of your basic kit, but they're nice to have as you sort of get a bit more experience. So the three things are, this green board is a cutting board, a self-healing cutting mat. God, sorry, I can't speak. The next one is a rotary cutter, okay, which is what you'll use to cut out on the mat, and then a ruler. Now, before I show you how to use this cutter, the one tip I would give you on this mat is that it needs to be stored flat, absolutely flat. So it needs to be stored on the floor or on a flat surface. I actually store mine underneath my settee. But if you store it lying upwards, so sitting upwards, even if you think it's completely flat, it will warp and it will bend, and then it won't sit flat like this. So you need to keep it in a flat position so that it doesn't warp and go all misshapen. So if we look at this cutting board first, or cutting mat, they come in any sizes. You can get like a really small one if you want to. It depends what sort of craft you're doing, because they're used for all sorts of different crafts. But the one I've got here is a good size one, so it's 60 centimetres high, and the width of it is 89 centimetres, so it's a good size. You can see all the markings. It's got centimetres one side, and then it's on inches on the other side. So essentially what it does is it allows you to use this rotary cutter, okay, and this rotary cutter has got an exceptionally sharp blade there, and it cuts the fabric out onto this mat, and this mat is called a self-healing mat. So what it actually allows you to do is cut the fabric out and use, you know, there's lots of cuts on there, and they sort of heal themselves. So obviously you can't cut fabric out with this cutter on a table or on a floor or anything like that, because that blade would just go into your surface and mark your surface. So you need one of these mats if you're going to be using a rotary cutter. So these two things go hand in hand, really. Okay, so now to have a look at this rotary cutter. So you can buy them in different sizes. This one is a 45mm rotary cutter. I've only recently, only over the last few years, started using this. I tend to mostly cut out using scissors, but whether you cut out your fabric using scissors or this rotary cutter is really very much personal preference. But I do use this sometimes, mostly use scissors, sometimes use this. So you've got a handle here, and the handle, you press the handle, which puts the cutter into place, and here there is something that holds it into place. Okay, it's like a safety catch. So it's incredibly sharp. You have to be very, very careful when you're cutting out with these. I'm always very cautious. Whenever you stop using it, you have to click it back and sit it back so that the blade gets hidden, so to speak. And then there's normally a cover that you can put on as well. So what you would do is click it into place so you're ready to use it, and then you simply put it on your fabric, and you either do it freehand or you can do it following a ruler. So if I do it freehand to show you, what I would do is you have to press down with a little bit of pressure, Okay, and it gives you a really, really smooth cut. I mean, when you're cutting with scissors, it can give you a little bit more of a jagged cut, but it gives you a really smooth cut. And one of the advantages of this is it is quite a bit quicker than using scissors. You can use a ruler. If I use this ruler here, hold it against the ruler, put your blade against the ruler. Again, really, really sharp cut. The other thing I've got here is a ruler. Now you can see that this is actually a metal ruler, and most people tend to have a plastic ruler, and quite often you see quilters with sort of quite deep rulers, and they've got all different markings on. So you know, there are lots of those rulers that you can buy. It's very much personal choice. So the last thing I'm going to show you are these clips. Now these are used instead of pins, so they do exactly the same job as pins. They're plastic and they've got like a little serrated edges inside to clip them. Come in all sorts of colours. I think traditionally they were used for quilters, but now people use them in all kinds of sewing. So they do a similar job to pins. So they hold two pieces of fabric together. So they do the same thing. Okay, so again, personal preference whether you use these. Traditionally I have used pins most of the time, but then sometimes I quite like to use these as well. So I hope that's been really helpful, and that you can now get together the basic bits that you need for your sewing kit, so you can start making all of your lovely sewing projects. I'd recommend this video next, which is how to make a basic tote bag. It's really, really simple, but very, very cute. So I will look forward to seeing you in that video, and thank you for joining me today. See you later. Bye.